gentlemen, welcome to episode 38 of PD's Awesome Guest Panel. My guest at this time is a veteran voice actress, as she has done many voice for popular video game franchises such as the Elder Scrolls series and the Fallout series, which is one of my favorites, as well as doing over 100 voiceover works for different promos, commercials, and narrations for the Baltimore and Washington, D.C. area. Aside from that, she is also a radio talk show host of her own show, the Shari Elliker Show. Her show has been nominated and won the Associated Press's Outstanding Talk Show Award for 2 consecutive years in a row, 2007 and 8. She is also a 2-time recipient of the AIR Award, the Achievement in Radio Award, for her work in the top radio stations in Washington, D.C. area, such as WJFK and, of course, DC 101. My guest at this time is Miss Shari Elliker. Shari, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Pete. It's so nice to see you.
So nice to see you, too. I've been a fan of your work, long time, like, especially in the Fallout series, because, I love the series in general, and I thought you and Wes did a great job in that video game.
Oh, thank you so much. Wes is one of my favorite people in the whole world. He is so talented, and it's so much fun to work with him. He and I actually go back a long time in terms of our working together. We worked together in a comedy show. We worked together in a bunch of different things. And the amazing thing about Wes is he commits completely. Like, he is the most dedicated guy. Like, he doesn't matter what he's doing. He just does exactly what he's supposed to do, and it's always great, and it's always just stellar. So I'm a big fan of his too.
Very cool. Now, before we get into the video game questions, though, I do want to ask, and this is going to be a typical cliche question, and that is, how did you get your first role or big break in both radio and voice acting?
Well, I was trying to get work as an actress, as a matter of fact, and this was shortly after the Earth cooled, so it was a very long time ago, and I was trying really hard to get work as an actress. And I was living in a town called Annapolis, Maryland, and a lot of work was in Washington, D.C., which was probably about 40 miles away. And when I was going to these jobs or trying to, get work or whatever, I noticed that the traffic reporters back then, because it was before GPS, it was before we had iPhones, it was before all of this, the traffic reporters were a really big deal on radio. You heard their voices and you heard their names more than you heard the DJ's names. So one day I called up, out of the blue, I called up the traffic company and I said, hey, how do you get a job as a traffic reporter? And they said, well, you have a very nice voice. Why don't you send us a tape and we'll see where it goes. So I went and recorded somebody else's traffic report and just copied it exactly as they did it, sent it in, and they gave me a job doing beach traffic, which was this job on a bridge. Literally, I had to stand on a bridge and report on traffic going back and forth across the bridge. It's called the Bay Bridge, this giant bridge. And, trucks were downshifting in my ear and everything, and I had to do all that. So I decided I never wanted to be a traffic reporter again. But then I got the opportunity to work on this really big show called The Don and Mike Show, which was a syndicated show. And I did that, and I got the job. I went and I kind of auditioned for them, and I got the job. And I worked for them for about 4 years. And while I was on the radio, because it was such a popular show, I was able to trade off of that to get more voiceover work. So I would, say to people, you probably have heard me doing traffic reports. Why don't you hire me to do voiceover work? So that's basically how I got into the voiceover world, is through the traffic reporting. And then it all just led to different jobs, and I've been doing it now for a number of years and have a home studio now. And of course, everything's changed. But yeah, it's been a really good career, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Very cool. That's so awesome to hear. Now, you also have, you mentioned acting, though, before, like, you have done acting roles. Like, I was just curious to know, get your memories on doing the HBO show Veep, where you played MSNBC reporter Andrea Tandy.
Yes. Yeah. So that was really a lot of fun. I had a recurring role, and I was Andrea Tandy. And the first part that I got was I actually had to interview somebody, it was, I can't remember the character on the show, but it was, he had come onto the show. It was MSNBC, quote unquote. And I was the anchor, and I interviewed the guy. Well, I thought it went pretty well. And I was shocked when they called me back, and they called me back and they said, we want you to actually host now this big debate scene that they're having. So this was a different episode. So I did that. And then I did a couple of other episodes where I was just sort of an anchor person or a reporter or whatever. Unfortunately, the show then moved back to California. It was being shot in Baltimore, and they lost kind of the deal in Baltimore with tax breaks and things like that. So the show went back to California. So I wasn't able to do any more episodes, but that was really fun. It was great. It was a really top-notch show, and everybody was so nice to work with.
Very cool. And
the director was this British woman. This is kind of funny because if you've worked on any kind of acting things, sometimes what happens is that if you're on a set, it's really scary, right? I mean, you're terrified because you think you're going to suck. So you're always worried about missing your lines or doing something wrong. And so oftentimes what'll happen is if you do something wrong or they don't like you or they don't like what you've done, they yell, cut, 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 blah, blah, blah. And they come up and they tell you, do it this way, do it this way. Well, then you're even more nervous because you just did it wrong and you have to do it again. But this was this British director, and she was so nice. Like, she'd come up, like if you did something, she'd come up and she'd say, oh, that was lovely. But next time, maybe we could try it a little bit like this. Like, she was so polite, like it just, you couldn't be nervous around her because she was so nice. So it was a great experience.
do you think that which did you find much easier to do though? Like doing voiceover work or doing radio? Like as far as, or acting in general, like out of the three, which did you think was the most easiest to do in your profession?
Oh, voiceover work is the deal of the century. It's really, really good. It doesn't take very long. I mean, you have to edit yourself now because everybody has a home studio. So you're usually doing your own editing. So that takes a little bit longer, but basically, I think it's a much better deal. There's no heavy lifting. You don't do hair and makeup. You don't have to prepare. A radio show is so much work. You have to prepare literally for hours before you go on the air. You have to know so much about the topics that you're talking about. You have to be ready for callers. You have to be ready for just about anything. Whereas voiceover work, you have a script. You're not on camera. You just, basically read. You have to take direction. That's the hardest part, is you have to be able to take direction very well and very, very quickly. Because if someone is saying to you, I want you to do it this way, but I want you to shave 1 second off of what you just did. You have to be able to do that right then and there. Take a second off of it, or add a second, or do something. And sometimes they'll give you direction that doesn't make any sense. Like they'll say, make it brighter. Well, what does that mean? Brighter? Does that mean smarter? Does that mean happier? Does that mean, and you can't really ask because you have to pretend that you know what they're talking about. So the best piece of advice I ever got from somebody was, they said, acknowledge what the director says when they tell you something in voiceover work. Like, let's say they tell you, we want it to be a little bit friendlier and a little bit this and this and this. You acknowledge it and you do it exactly the same way you just did it, and they'll never know the difference. So but voiceover work is far and away the best work, I think.
I agree, because the fact that, you can always pre-record, your voices, it's not a big deal. You can always redo it in a different shot. With acting though, I feel like if it's a live action show, if it's a live studio audience, then you can't, you have to be careful what happens, because then you don't want to make a mistake. If there's no going back to that. With voice acting, you can actually, redo that in a different take. That's what I just, interpreted.
You're 100% right, Pete. Exactly. Yeah, you get many other chances, when you're doing voiceover work, because especially now, because if you're in your own home studio and nobody is there, you can do it as many times as you need to and get it right. Whereas you're right, with acting, you've got a bunch of people watching you. The time is money. They don't like you to make mistakes. They don't want to do it over again. So the pressure is really hard. It's intense.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I do want to get, because you've done a couple of shorts in the past, so what were your memories of doing the short Mr. Comedy as Rosie Adams?
Well, you did your homework.
I want to make sure I got every project you did to make sure that I got my
Oh my
information right.
God, Pete, you're incredible. You're amazing. That's fun. That's a group of people. Again, Wes Johnson is always in these little projects that we do and everything. And that was for the 48-hour film festival, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but what it is basically a group of people get together, a group of filmmakers get together, and they all get one subject. Okay, they get a prop. They all use the same prop. They all use the same line of dialogue. And I can't remember what else it's been because it's been so long. But you basically have 48 hours to make a film. So, and then everybody turns in their films at the exact same time on a certain deadline. And then we all have a film festival, and then people vote on what it is. But yeah, that was funny. That was a fun project. That was with the Travesty Film people, and they're always fun and they're always easy to work with, and I enjoy working with them. So it was fun. Mr. Comedy was fun. I got to be obnoxious and and all of that, which came very naturally, of course.
Memories of doing another short that you did called Last Call as Senior VP Beverly.
Last Call. Was that with Wes too? Remind me of that one.
I think Wes is in that one too.
Yeah. So Last Call, I think if I remember that, I think that was, oh no, that was the elevator. I'm trying to remember Last Call now. I don't remember it, Pete. Don't tell Wes. I don't remember. But I'm sure it was great fun because he was in it, right? So it had to be fun.
I mean, you both have done a lot of projects together. Like, the Fallout series is one of them. Like,
Yeah.
Memories of doing the TV show Homicide: Life on the Street.
Oh my goodness, you're getting in the Wayback Machine. So Homicide: Life on the Street, that was a really interesting episode because it was about a guy who fell into the subway, okay? And the subway train had pushed him up against like a barrier. And the only thing keeping him alive was the fact that the subway train was holding his organs in. So as soon as they back up the train, he was going to die, right? Because it was like the compression from the subway train. So my role was a person that was like a bystander or whatever. I was one of the people on the platform that watched somebody push this guy onto the tracks that got him killed. And so, but the interesting thing about the shoot was they did it at the subway, in the subway station in Baltimore City. And we were there all night long, and there was a bunch of technical problems and a bunch of whatever. Well, the deal with the film company was they had to reopen the subway at 6 a.m. There was no negotiation here. At 6 a.m., that thing was going to open and the shoot was over. So I waited around literally all night long to do my lines, and they didn't get to me until almost 5:30 in the morning. So I had one shot to get it right because they were out of time, right? And if I screwed up and I cost them more time, the subway station would open and the whole shoot would be, ended. So that was scary but I got it right and everything worked out fine and everything. And it was okay, but a long night, a very long night.
Very, very, very awesome. Now, with voice acting though, like, can you take me like to behind the scenes though, like how the voice acting process goes, like whether you're doing a video game or like a cartoon, like do they make you like do you go into a booth? Like how is it done though, like the voice acting process?
Sure. So for instance, with Fallout 3, what they did was, so I was unfamiliar with the series and I'm not a gamer at all. So you'll have to forgive me because I'm really ignorant to all of it. So what they did for me was I would have my lines and they would say to me, they would give me a little lead in, like they'd say, okay, in this particular scene, you're in a bar and this has just happened and you have to react to it. So then you would read your line based on the direction that they gave you, and they fed you direction the whole time. So every line that you read almost, they set you up and they would say, okay, here's what's happening in this scene. Your father is lost, you're this and this and this, whatever. So you had to react to what they were telling you to do. So that was one way to do it. With voice acting, you usually, if you're doing a dialogue with someone, you're in two separate studios sometimes, so it's a little bit tricky. But most of the time they put you together. As far as Fallout 3 goes, it was just me. I had I didn't have anybody else to play off of except the director. And that was the only person that was reacting to anything that I was doing or giving me any direction at all. So I didn't have the the luxury of looking at someone and having a dialogue back and forth. That just didn't happen.
I see, because that was gonna be my next question too. Like, when you have to portray a particular character for any role, like, how do you get into like the moment? Like, how do you get into that character? Like, like, if you have to portray like a particular character, like, how do you like the process of like, like what gets you in like the mood to actually portray the character and how it's actually portrayed?
Well, I would like to tell you that I had some like really intense method that, that I got into character and that I did all this stuff. It's really, I'm pretty simple. And for me, it's mostly about listening very carefully to whatever the direction is. So, because the voiceover stuff isn't really like, it's quick, I mean, you're not doing like this in-depth character study. You're doing it really fast. I mean, you're given direction and you have to respond pretty quickly and all of that. So you don't have um, a day of rehearsal where you can really think about your character and get into it. You have to just visualize in your head, if you can, what you think this character is doing. And it's very helpful sometimes to just put yourself in that situation. I took one voiceover class in my entire career, and that class said, you should, no matter if you're doing a bank commercial, if you're doing a drama, whatever you're doing, you should always know or name your character. Name your character, even if it's like something just for some dumb commercial. Let's say you're doing a car commercial and you're the announcer for the car commercial. You should name your character. You should know what that character's motivation is. I thought that was the dumbest advice I ever got in my life. It's really not that deep. I think you have to know pretty much what they're looking for and give them that. But I don't know that you really have to go into some super deep, character analysis. At least for me, that's not my process.
I see. And for we talked about like voice acting overwork. Did you have any influences like previous voice actors where like you look at them and like, man, this person influences me, like whether it's a voice actor or actress in general?
No, because when I got started in this, Pete, I really didn't know of, I mean, I didn't know much about it. I knew that I wanted to be in radio. I knew that I wanted to do some kind of voiceover work, but my primary objective was commercial work. What I really wanted to do was commercials, and there was a very basic reason for that. It pays a lot, so I wanted to be able to voice over commercials. And then I got into voicing over promos, which I did a bunch of them for the Discovery Channel, which is sort of there was a show called The Wedding Channel, and I was the voice of the Wedding Channel. And that would be, like coming up next, find out why the bride, hates her dress or whatever. So then I got into promo work and things like that. And I liked it because it was efficient. You could make a lot of money not really doing that much. I mean, you didn't have to put on a bunch of makeup. You didn't have to stand in front of a camera. You could go in, you use one instrument, and that's your voice. And if you can nail it and you can get it right, it's very lucrative. So I didn't really have any role models or anybody that I was intrigued by at that time. I just wanted to do it.
What about in radio though? Like, did you have like inspirations when it came to be like a radio talk show host?
Well, I think that the first show that I worked on, which I was lucky to work on, was the Don and Mike show, and I think that those guys were great inspirations to me. They I watched how they did a show, and I kind of used that as a model for the next few shows that I did. I mean, I went on to do a morning show then on WHFS, and I went on to do a women's talk show on Sirius XM. And some of the things that I learned from them, about how to pace a show, about how to find funny things, recall things like that. I stole from them. I mean, and so I feel very lucky to have worked with them when I did early in my career and be able to learn what I did. But I wasn't like again, I wasn't like a big I was a big fan of talk radio because I drove a lot. And back then, I didn't want to really listen to music that much in the car, so I would listen to talk radio, and I would listen to these talk show hosts. And talk radio way back then really wasn't political. It wasn't like it is now, where talk radio is mostly political and it's mostly conservative
Yeah.
talk radio. And it wasn't like that. It was general subjects. It was lifestyle. It was water cooler things. And you could learn a lot. You could learn a lot on a 30-minute drive. You could hear about a subject and listen to interviews. So I got a lot out of that too.
Oh, okay. And because we talked about video games before, you have done many voices for two popular franchises, the Elder Scroll and Fallout series. You have also have done work in video games for the Star Trek video games. So, what were your memories doing of the Star Trek Legacy video game?
That was one of the ones that I didn't do a lot of voices on. So I don't really have any great remembrance of that. I know that it was the same group of people from Bethesda Softworks. And again, they're always easy to work with because they always set you up and they always make sure that you know what you're supposed to be doing and what your direction is. So, but it was a great experience. Fallout 3 was the best experience though, because I got to do so much. I mean, I was like 80% of the female voices on that game, and the only thing that really happened that was kind of bad was I got a terrible cold in the middle of shooting this or recording this, and I was booked for days and days and days. And at the time, I was doing a live radio show every single day from 9 to noon in Baltimore. And then after my show, I would drive to the studio in Bethesda and start working on Fallout 3. So I lost my voice, and since they really didn't have necessarily um, an idea of what some of these voices were going to sound like, when I went in there and I had lost my voice and I was very hoarse, they said, let's try that. Let's use it. Let's see, maybe some of these characters can just have a deeper, hoarse voice. So we did a bunch of stuff that day when I was recording, and then they came back and they said, no, you just sounded sick. You didn't sound sexy. You didn't sound anything. You just sounded sick. So we had to redo all of that. But that was a really good experience.
Now, for the Fallout 3 game, because the main protagonist, his answers vary, so the character could say anything they want. Did you have to do like numerous recordings per character? Like, how many recordings did you have to do per character? Because the answer for the protagonist can be different, though. Like, there's different answers for each response.
Yeah, there was a lot of them. You had to do numerous reactions, numerous responses. Again, that's where the director would give you, would read you the line because you weren't working with another actor, because the other actor was the gamer, or whatever. So the director would give you the different lines and give you direction and everything. So yeah, I can remember that being a little tedious at times because you had to do over and over and over again a lot of stuff.
Now, for Fallout 3, though, you played many characters. You played Martha Wilson, you played one of the Brotherhood members, the Paladin members, and also one of my favorite characters you portrayed, which was the Ant Agonizer, otherwise known as Tanya Kristoff. Um, did you have a particular memory of doing any of the many characters you portrayed in Fallout 3?
Pete, I'm going to be honest with you. You're going to kill me. I have no recollection of, I mean, only because it was out of context, right? Because I couldn't visualize what was going to be on the screen or couldn't visualize how the game was going to play out. So for me, it was just basically doing lines. And I had to vary my voice a little bit based on whatever the character was. And if the character was very tough or sympathetic or whatever it was, I just sort of went with that. So for me, I didn't really know how that was all going to fall together when the final product came out. So I have very little recognition of that, and I never played the game, and I mean, I heard snippets of it, like Wes has given me snippets of it because we've done a couple of voiceover uh, forums and some voiceover panels. And so one of the reasons I got invited was because of Fallout 3. And I'd say, Wes, I don't even know what I did. I can't do this. I can't be on this panel and talk about that when I don't even remember anything about it. I never watched the game. I never do anything. So he would try to coach me and like send me little snippets and say, this is this and this is this. But it all kind of, went together. I'm really dumb when it comes to all of that stuff. So unfortunately, I have to be honest and tell you that I don't have a really solid memory of it.
This is also when you played. I was gonna ask too, like if like your memory is actually portraying a villain, because you actually portrayed a villain role, which something I'd never seen before.
Yeah, I vaguely remember. I vaguely remember doing the villain and being happy that I could be angry, because that's always like a kind of a fun emotion to play. So I can remember doing that. I also can remember the session where you're getting hit. So so the whole session was just say, ow, ow, ah, ah, where you're being beat up or screaming. I mean, there was a session of screaming and things like that. So those were really fun. And yeah, so being the villain that's always big fun.
Everyone I ask, they always say the same exact thing when I ask if you could portray both either the hero or the villain, which would you portray? And they go, "Oh, hero, 100%. Not hero, villain,
Villain,
100%."
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Pete. Yeah, because it's just more fun. There's more there. You can vocalize things a little bit differently. A hero is going to be probably a little bit more steady, but a villain gets to emote. It gets, you get to
Yeah,
really get into it.
I totally agree 100% on that one. And if I mean, definitely you're gonna be proud of me on this one. But when I was playing the game, because my father and I are huge fans of the Fallout series, played every single one of them. Every time when we encountered the ant agonizer, uh, I would always side with the ant agonizer.
Oh, good for you. I'm I'm happy to hear that. Good for you.
I'm Team Shari and Team ant agonizer.
Thank you, Pete. That means a lot.
Anytime. Now, memories of doing the Elder Scroll 3 Tribunal, where you played Azura.
Azura, yeah, that was kind of a big character. But again, it was a while ago, so I don't really remember exactly doing that. But that was one of the first games that I did with Bethesda Softworks. So that was a lot of fun. I remember it being a really good session. Again, we had a lot of direction. Nobody there except the director. But yeah, it was a good it was a good time.
Sweet. And I did like, I do like your like radio work, because when I see like, because I've seen clips and like audio of your work, and it has like that smooth, you have that natural charisma, smooth, like segue whenever you're doing like narration or like radio. It's like you're the way project is very similar to the late great Johnny Carson.
Well, oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever gotten a nicer compliment. Thank you, Pete. That's very sweet of you.
It,
That's very nice of you.
it's just
Yeah.
like, hmm,
So that's kind of as far as voiceover work goes. Um, I, I don't. I generally have the same. I get hired for the same kinds of things over and over again, and it's always that sort of smooth jazz kind of, kind of work where I like I'll get hired to do something and have to do a disclaimer about you can get explosive diarrhea, and I have to like make it sound really nice. So I don't get a lot of those. That's why doing angry things is so much fun, because mostly what I get are sort of the really even toned kind of steady narration. I just did something for the State Department last week. I'm doing something interesting, which is a little bit more. I wouldn't say it's angry, but it's a little bit more um, direct. And that's I'm working for a political action committee, and it's called Really American, reallyamerican.com, and I do some of their videos. And it's a lot of political stuff, and it's very hard hitting. So that's something a little bit different, because it isn't that smooth jazz kind of hello there, blah blah blah. I'm glad you have diarrhea, that type of thing. It's much more. It's a little sharper, and I like that. I like that. It's something different.
Because you know what, I agree with you, like, and I definitely like appreciate, like, how you like the voiceover work you do, because you can run the gamut, like how your different like styles though. You could be like the common Morgan Freeman, like, style, like narration. Then you could be like the funny entertainment late great Phil Hartman way. That's like you could take the phone book and make it entertaining. Like I can, like, I think Shari, like, this is just my opinion, but I think, like, like the planetarium shows they have.
Yeah.
I think you would be an absolute great for a narration for like the planetarium, like to do the constellations and like just talk about, like, like different concentrations in space. Like I could definitely see you doing something like that because of
Pete,
how smooth your calm and your voices.
I would kiss you, but we're on Zoom, so I can't. And plus, it's COVID, so we'd both get sick, and that's not good. But thank you. That's very kind of you. I appreciate that very much. It's very nice of you. Yeah. One of the things that I tell people when they are trying to get into voiceover work is they always ask, what kind of voice do you have to have? That's like what most people wonder. And I always tell them, it really doesn't matter what your voice sounds like. I mean, it used to be this big, you had to have either, if you were a man, you had to have a Wes Johnson voice, where you had to have this deep, very booming, authoritative kind of voice. And if you were a woman, they wanted you to either be kind of squeaky high, like whatever, like a housewife, or someone really deep, sexy kind of whatever. And so there's three different things. There's your chest voice, there's your head voice, which is way up here, and it's like a little bit more like, okay, it'd be sort of like a little bit like a valley girl, but not really, like way up there. Okay. And then there's your blended voice, so you want to use your blended voice. But I always say the main thing you have to be able to do in voiceover work is relatability. You have to be able to relate to people and make them believe whatever it is you're doing, whether you're doing a commercial, whether you're doing a narration, whether you're doing an acting job. You have to be believable and relatable. So it doesn't really matter what your voice sounds like, but if you can take direction and be relatable, you can be successful.
I couldn't agree more on that, because like I've always said, like, and this has come from someone that's, aspired to be a voice actor himself though one day, that I believe that in order the character you portray, it has to be believable. Like you have to make the person go when they're watching you going, hey, I can relate to this person.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's really important. It's really important. Much more so than having a deep voice or having a sexy voice or having whatever. Those things, that's really secondary, and much more so now than ever before, because you really do hear all kinds of voices on the radio. There was a time when you would hear just a couple of different styles, and now you hear all kinds of voices. You hear people that are young, you hear people that are old, you hear just all different ethnicities. So it's the voiceover field is wide open as far as the sound of somebody's voice.
Yes, the horizon has been broadened, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, definitely.
I did have a question as far as recording wise to, like, when you do voiceover work. Did you have to wear like the big headsets when doing recording or voiceover work?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't wear headphones when I do my own home studio. I use a speaker, and it's just because I don't particularly like headphones that much. So I don't use headphones when I record at home. But whenever you go into a studio, you always have headphones on. And it's just a matter of, and probably most people would wear headphones in their home studios. I find them heavy and kind of bulky and whatever, I have them, but I would prefer, when I'm listening back to something, when I'm listening back to my voice and I'm editing, I would prefer to hear it through a speaker than through headphones. But yeah, you always wear them in the studio.
Can I share an interesting story though, that you said something similar with the headphones though? Because I've heard, like, like I watch auto commentary before, because one of my favorite shows is The Simpsons. I love The Simpsons,
Me
and
too.
it's a great show.
I
And
know. I love The Simpsons. I love them.
long
Yeah.
time fan. My father used to record like the episodes, like for me and my sister back in the day, like in the 90s. And
Yeah.
one episode in particular had Kirk Douglas in the episode, and the writers or creators of the show said in an oral commentary that while recording Kirk Douglas, he refused to wear the headsets because it hurt his ear. So definitely to go back to what you're saying about the headsets, I could definitely see, like people's like points on voiceover, like as far as the headsets, because they could be bulky, they could be uncomfortable to wear, they
Right.
hurt people's ears.
Yeah, they are uncomfortable. I mean, and if you're really recording for a long time, they get on your nerves, you know what I mean? You're there and everything. But if you're working with a director or whatever, in order for them to hear for you to hear them, they come in through your headphones. So that's how you communicate is they you what am I trying to say? Their audio comes in through your headphones, so you don't really have a choice. But yeah, I agree. I don't particularly like them. I'm glad that Kirk Douglas is also a fan of no headphones. I
Yeah.
feel in good company now.
And it's coming because he's a legendary man too. Like, I mean, I'm a big fan of his too. Like, I mean, The Simpsons. Like, when I think of voiceover works, I think of shows that are prominent to like voice acting, like like the animated series, video games, anime, like all that. I do want to and also I would say this too. As far as voice acting goes, that if I want to do voice acting, and I wanted to hire a team of like coaches, of voice acting coaches, you would definitely be one of them.
Oh, I'm telling you, you're getting the best Christmas present of your life. You are amazing. Well, thank you. And I've not really done. People have asked me to do coaching and things like that, and I really have never done it for a couple of reasons. And one of the main reasons is I feel so guilty because it's such a hard business to break into. When you are an actor and you're very attractive, let's say, um, even if you're not that great of an actor, but if you're really attractive, you will probably get work, because you could probably get work doing certain things and only having a couple of lines, and it wouldn't really matter. But if you're super attractive, they'll hire you. With acting or with voiceover work, as I was saying before, it's one instrument. You only have your voice, so it's so competitive and so hard that I've always felt a little bit guilty about charging anybody or coaching anybody for money because it's tough for them to break into the business, and I would feel guilty if they never got a job. I consider myself extremely lucky that I was able to be, that I had the opportunities that I did, and I was able to get into the business when I did, and to be able to continue on for so many years and still work, because it's really hard. And for a long time, Pete, that there was only union work. So people that were in the union got the lion's share of work because they were considered much better. They were considered the cream of the crop. They were the gold standard. Well, as things started to change and people were able to go on voiceover sites like Voice 123 and voices.com and things like that, people will do voiceover work for $20 or for $5, So all of that has changed. So the field is so open right now as far as what's out there and how many people are in it. It's even more competitive because you've got, anybody that's got a microphone and a computer, they can do it. They can really, do the work and market themselves.
You're right. Now, before we conclude this interview, this is the part where I ask every guest, because this is an open forum, so this is the part where I'll have the guests talk about, or they could say anything they want, anything you want. So the floor is yours, Shari.
Well, I would just like to say that Pete is my new best friend. He's the greatest guy I've ever met in my life. No, I want to say thank you so much, Pete. This has been great fun, and I was very nervous because I was so worried you were going to ask me things about Fallout 3 in terms of the gaming portion of it, which I don't know anything about, and I'm embarrassed to admit that because I know it's a great game, and I know people that has lots and lots of people that are big fans and everything. So it's no reflection on that. It's just my own ignorance. But no, I'd like to say that for people like you or anyone else that wants to get into the voiceover world, it's a great business to be in. It's a lot of fun. It's challenging, and yet it's very, very satisfying. The hardest part is getting the work. if you can build up some clientele, and this has been my whole thing, is it's all about return business. If you can get recurring clients, I don't really market myself that much. I'd say 90% of what I do is work for people that I've already worked for. So if you can build up that clientele where someone trusts you and someone believes in what you do and someone is able to rely on you and know that you're not going to be late, you're going to show up, you're going to do a good job, you're going to deliver what they need. It's a great business, and I would encourage anybody to try it if they want to, including you.
Thank you. And this is why I think you would be a great, like, in a voiceover mentor or coach role, because you're so, like, positive, inspiring, and also motivating.
Oh, did I mention that you're my best friend?
I gotta mail you and your family a Christmas card.
I would like that very much. I hope that I get that from you.
Yep, I'll send it, like, message me, and I'll send it right away tomorrow. Like,
Okay. Okay, that sounds
so,
perfect.
before we conclude, I just want to say thank you for not only this great interview, but also thank you for those memories you gave me playing Fallout 3.
Oh, you're so welcome, Pete, and thank you. This has been a great joy. I really appreciate it. I wish you nothing but the best. I wish you a happy and healthy 2021, and keep up the really good work. Number 38.
Thank you, and likewise, Shari. Like, I'm gonna actually send you a copy of this interview as soon as it's done editing. I'm gonna give you, so that way you have a copy of this interview.
I'm looking forward to it. All right, you take good care of yourself.
You too. Have an
Okay,
awesome night.
bye now.
Bye
Bye.
bye.